Money doesn't just buy things, it buys power, and power shapes the world in ways most people can't even see. The rich don't control people with guns or threats anymore. They control them with dreams. They design the systems you live in, the media you consume, the prices you pay, and the beliefs you hold. They don't tell you what to do directly. They make you want to do it. That's real power. The ability to make people believe they're acting freely when they're actually following someone else's plan. The rich understood long ago that control isn't about force. It's about influence. They don't fight to rule you. They persuade you to rule yourself in their favor. Look around. Everywhere you go, someone is selling you a version of success. A commercial, a celebrity, a trend. They're all messages crafted by people who already made it, convincing you to chase the same illusion they once created for you to fund their wealth. The wealthy don't spend their days working like everyone else. They spend their time thinking, strategizing. They know the secret most people never learn. The game isn't about working harder. It's about owning the board. The poor trade hours for dollars. The rich trade ideas for empires. They own assets, not time. They create systems that make money even while they sleep. That's why they seem untouchable, because their money no longer depends on effort. It depends on everyone else's effort. Think of the brands you can't live without. Apple, Google, Amazon. These aren't just companies. They're networks of control. Each one rewired how people think, shop, communicate, and even dream. They don't just sell products, they sell lifestyles. And once you buy into the lifestyle, you buy everything else that comes with it. The rich don't need to tell you what to desire. They design what desire looks like. They know your weaknesses better than you do. They study your habits through data, ads, and behavior patterns. Every tap, scroll, and click tells them who you are, and they use that knowledge to shape what you'll want next. That's how they keep control. Not through laws, but through attention. The new currency isn't gold or oil, it's your focus. Whoever controls your focus controls your life. And the rich have mastered the art of keeping you distracted. You see, distraction is the most profitable business on earth. If you're busy scrolling, watching, and comparing, you're too occupied to think about how the system works. And while you're chasing the next trend, they're collecting the money you're helping them generate without realizing it. They make you feel like you're in charge of your life, when in reality, you're just a customer in their grand design. They decide what you'll value, how you'll spend your time, and even how you'll define success. They create the illusion of choice, but the truth is, you're choosing from their menu and they own the restaurant. Think about the way they use media and marketing. Every headline, every ad, every influencer, it's all part of a larger narrative. The rich understand storytelling better than anyone because stories control emotions and emotions control actions. They don't need to convince your mind. They just need to touch your feelings. They make you believe you're missing out. They make you think happiness is one purchase away. And while you're chasing that next dopamine hit, they're buying the companies that sell it to you. That's the power of rich people. They don't chase. They attract. They don't react. They predict. They see 10 steps ahead because they built the game you're trying to win. You think they're lucky, but luck has nothing to do with it. They studied psychology, market behavior, and human weakness long enough to design systems that ensure the money always flows upward. When you buy something, you're not just paying for a product, you're feeding an empire. They use debt to control governments, marketing to control the masses, and technology to control minds. Most people live paycheck to paycheck, not because they're lazy, but because they've been trained to consume instead of create. The rich make money by turning your attention into their profit. They sell you comfort, convenience, and escape, all while keeping you dependent on their system. They want you tired, entertained, and distracted because a distracted population is easy to control. They'll make you feel rebellious by buying their brand. They'll sell you freedom through their apps. They'll convince you you're independent while guiding every move you make. That's not coincidence, that's mastery. The rich understand the law of leverage. They know one person can't control millions directly, but systems can. Social media algorithms, influencer culture, financial institutions, all of these are tools of soft control. You'll never see the puppeteer. You'll only see the show. They don't need violence, they use influence. They don't need to silence you. They just flood your world with noise until truth gets drowned out. They know that whoever shapes perception doesn't need to force obedience because people willingly follow what they believe is true. That's why they control education, media, and finance, because those three pillars shape every human decision. The school teaches you how to work for money, but never how to make it work for you. The media tells you what's important but hides what's powerful. The banks lend you money while quietly profiting from your debt. It's a cycle, and every part of it is designed by people who understood one rule. Control the system, and you control the people inside it. The average person thinks the rich are greedy, but that's too simple. The truth is, they're strategic. They play the long game. They're not thinking about next week or next month. They're planning for decades. They build wealth like architects, not gamblers. And while others react to the economy, the rich shape it. They lobby governments, own media networks, fund research, and even influence wars. Behind every major event, there's always money guiding the direction. They don't need to win elections. They finance them. They don't need to lead countries. They own the resources those countries rely on. That's real power. The kind that doesn't need visibility to exist. But here's what most people never realize. The same knowledge that makes the rich powerful is available to anyone who seeks it. They're not magicians. They're masters of understanding value. They know where value is created and where it's wasted. They study how money moves, how emotions drive decisions, and how fear keeps people trapped. And because they know this, they operate differently. They don't react to panic, they profit from it. When markets crash, they buy. When people fear, they prepare. That's why crises make the poor poorer and the rich richer, because chaos is opportunity for those who understand control. Their power isn't evil, it's efficient. They use systems, leverage, information, and patience, while most use time, effort, and emotion. Their words shape culture. Their products shape habits. Their money shapes nations. They don't just live in the world, they build it around their vision. And they understand one thing deeply. If you control belief, you control behavior. That's why they invest in narratives. Every ad, every trend, every influencer is part of a script written by those who understand how humans think. They know people crave belonging, validation, and meaning, so they offer those feelings in exchange for loyalty. And loyalty is priceless. They don't force you to obey. They make you want to comply because compliance feels comfortable and rebellion feels risky. That's psychological power in its purest form. And yet there's hope in understanding all this, because once you see the game, you can play it differently. The goal isn't to hate the rich, it's to learn from them, to see how they think, how they plan, and how they move. They don't complain about unfairness, they adapt. They don't wait for opportunity, they build it. They don't chase trends, they create them. And if you start thinking like that, slowly, you move from being controlled to being in control. Because power isn't reserved for the wealthy, it's reserved for the aware. The real difference between the rich and everyone else isn't intelligence, it's awareness. The rich know the rules, the poor don't even realize the game exists. So educate yourself about money, systems, and influence. Start small, but start smart. Don't get trapped by consumerism. Become a creator of value instead of a customer of comfort. Use knowledge as your weapon and patience as your shield. The rich built the system, but awareness gives you the blueprint to escape it. Once you see through the illusion, you'll never unsee it. And that's when real power begins. Not when you have money, but when money no longer controls you. The deeper you go into understanding power, the more you realize it's not about domination, it's about design. The rich design outcomes while everyone else reacts to them. They control the flow of ideas, capital, and emotion, because they understand one timeless truth. If you can shape how people think, you can predict what they'll do. That's why their greatest investments aren't always in stocks or real estate. They're in influence. They buy media outlets, finance political campaigns, own platforms where billions spend their time, and even fund independent voices that quietly echo their interests. They've turned communication into currency and attention into gold. Every headline that trends, every viral topic, every social argument that divides people, it's fuel for their power because chaos distracts while they accumulate control. The average person fights over opinions while the elite buy the companies profiting from that conflict. It's the brilliance of their system. It feeds on emotion and ignorance. They understand human nature perfectly. They know people crave meaning, belonging, and identity, so they give them illusions of choice that keep them attached to a narrative designed from above. When you're busy defending your beliefs, you don't realize those beliefs were planted there in the first place. That's how control works. It hides behind freedom. The illusion of choice is the most powerful prison ever built. You think you're deciding, but you're deciding inside boundaries drawn by someone else. The wealthy never argue about right or wrong. They argue about ownership, because whoever owns the stage writes the script. Whoever funds the news directs the truth, and whoever holds the debt holds the leash. The system isn't broken, it's functioning exactly as designed, and the design benefits those who wrote the rules centuries ago. The rich don't hoard money because of greed. They do it for security, legacy, and leverage. They know one generation's discipline creates 10 generations of dominance. While others seek comfort, the wealthy seek control. They reinvest profits into assets that produce more profit. They don't let emotion guide decisions. They let math, history, and psychology guide them. And they don't compete. They buy the competition. That's why true power feels invisible. It doesn't shout. It whispers through influence, a lobbyist's handshake, a policy adjustment, a subtle trend that shifts markets overnight. They control not by pushing, but by pulling gently until the world moves in their direction. And yet they always appear generous. The rich donate, create foundations, start charities, but these acts often serve multiple purposes: tax optimization, brand polish, and social influence. It's not evil, it's strategic. They know perception drives trust, and trust drives opportunity. If people see them as saviors, they won't question the systems that made them kings. They speak in language that sounds noble, but functions as control. When a billionaire says, "We're working to make the world better," what they often mean is, "We're redesigning the world in a way that keeps us in charge." Because true power never gives itself away, it just changes shape. The modern rich don't wear crowns, they wear suits. They don't rule with swords, they rule with systems. And those systems, finance, media, technology, are so embedded in daily life that escaping them feels impossible. But awareness cracks the illusion. When you begin to question why trends exist, why opinions shift so fast, why success always seems tied to spending, you start to see the hidden hand guiding the narrative. The rich learned early that fear sells better than truth. People don't move for facts, they move for feelings. That's why the most powerful weapon in the world isn't a gun. It's a story. Stories make people believe, believers obey, and obedience sustains control. Every advertisement, every slogan, every political promise is a story crafted to manipulate emotion and direct attention. And attention, once captured, becomes profit. They don't need to brainwash you. They just need to keep you distracted long enough to forget who's behind the curtain. While you're busy chasing validation on social media, they're studying your behavior through data analytics. They know what time you wake up, what you search for, what you dream about. They predict your next purchase before you do. That's not coincidence. It's the new age of behavioral economics. The rich no longer guess what the public wants. They create the demand and then sell the solution. The cycle never ends, and that's why they stay on top. But their real genius lies in language. Words are their most powerful weapon. They use specific phrases that evoke safety, progress, and unity while protecting their interests. For example, they say economic growth when they mean corporate expansion. They say job creation when they mean low-cost labor. They say globalization when they mean centralization of power in fewer hands. The words sound good because they're designed to, but hidden beneath them lies control. That's how they influence without resistance. They redefine reality through vocabulary, and the masses repeat those words without realizing their meaning has been inverted. That's the quiet art of control, making people defend the very thing that keeps them powerless. Yet if you learn this language, if you study the way power hides behind politeness, you can decode the entire system. The moment you start seeing through euphemisms, you begin to reclaim your mind because clarity is rebellion. The rich use their words like chess moves, calculated, precise, strategic. Every statement shapes perception. Every silence hides a motive. They never speak without purpose because they know perception creates markets, and markets create money. That's why their public appearances are rehearsed to perfection, why their interviews feel spontaneous yet scripted, and why their failures always turn into narratives of innovation. They control the message so the message controls the masses. But here's where it gets interesting. Their influence only works when people seek validation from outside themselves. If you stop worshiping image, stop chasing approval, and stop buying identity, you break the cycle of control. That's why financial literacy is more than math. It's mental freedom. When you understand money, you stop being manipulated by it. The rich control people because most people don't understand how power truly works. But the moment you see that wealth is built through leverage, information, and patience, you realize you can use the same principles to build your own form of freedom. Their systems aren't magic, they're methods. And methods can be learned. The only difference between being controlled and being in control is awareness. Once you wake up to the architecture of power, you'll never view the world the same again. They say power corrupts, but what they don't tell you is how power evolves. For the rich, power isn't just about money, it's about control. Not control through violence or fear, but through influence, design, and ownership of the very systems we depend on every day. You see, true wealth doesn't live in the bank. It lives in structures, institutions, and ideologies. The ultra-rich don't argue with the system because they are the system. Their fingerprints are on everything. The media that shapes your beliefs, the algorithms that decide what you see, the laws that determine what's fair, and even the dreams you chase without realizing who planted them. Think about it. From the moment you wake up, you step into a world built by them. Your alarm? A product owned by a major tech corporation. The news you scroll through? Filtered by algorithms designed to keep you engaged, not informed. Even the coffee you drink comes from a brand that traces back to a handful of multinational companies. You're not just living in their world. You're maintaining it with every purchase, every click, every moment of attention. The rich don't need to tell you what to do. They simply make you want it yourself. That's real power, when control feels like freedom. They've mastered the art of invisible influence, turning capitalism into a kind of religion. You work hard, you dream big, you chase success, but the ladder you're climbing was built by them, and it only leads where they want it to go. Money doesn't just buy luxury, it buys time, silence, and obedience. It funds politicians, shapes public opinion, and builds narratives that protect the powerful. When a billionaire wants something done, they don't argue. They donate. When they want something hidden, they don't censor. They distract. And when they want loyalty, they don't demand it. They buy it. We like to think we're free thinkers, but most of our choices are pre-designed. Our values, our goals, our definition of success, all influenced by those who profit from them. They tell you to hustle, to grind, to never quit, because they need the machine to keep running. And you're the fuel. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. The rich don't chase money anymore. They chase control. Money is just the tool. The power comes from shaping the world in their image. They buy media to shape perception. They buy politicians to write laws. They buy land, companies, data, and even space exploration, because owning the future means owning the people who will live in it. Look at how they've turned necessity into dependency. Water is privatized. Healthcare is a business. Education is a debt trap. Even happiness has been commodified into something you can subscribe to monthly. They've learned that people don't revolt when they're comfortable. They only revolt when they're awake. So they keep you entertained, distracted, and just busy enough to never ask, who really benefits from this system? And while you scroll through social media comparing your life to people richer than you, they're comparing themselves to nations. They don't compete with other millionaires. They compete with countries for power, influence, and control over the next century. Their wealth funds research, shapes culture, and decides which technologies humanity will see and which will stay hidden in laboratories. But here's the part they can't control: awareness. The moment you start seeing the patterns, the illusion begins to fade. Because the real danger to their empire isn't poverty or rebellion, it's realization. People start understanding how power really works. Money loses its magic. They want you to believe success equals luxury, but real success is freedom. Freedom from debt. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from the need to impress. The rich may own the world, but they can't own a mind that refuses to be controlled. If you look closely, you'll notice how every revolution in history started the same way, with awareness. Not weapons, not wars. Awareness. Masses realize they've been playing someone else's game, they start building their own. And that's where your true power lies. Not in envy, not in imitation, but in education and independence. Learn how money works. Learn how systems are built. Learn how influence spreads, because the more you understand, the less control they have. The rich will continue to shape the world, but whether you become a pawn or a player, that's your choice. The world isn't divided between rich and poor. It's divided between the aware and the unaware. And awareness, my friend, is the first step to real power. The rich may control the world, but they only control those who never question it. So question everything.